was saying to several of y'all before the meeting got started that I have never been asked, nor have I ever given, a speech on leadership. When I get up to speak, I am talking about the city's neighborhoods or the budget or the infrastructure bonds or why we can't ever seem to get anything done downtown, and when we do, it's usually wrong. There are all kinds of things that I talk about, but I've never talked about leadership. So when David asked me, and I am absolutely devoted to him because he was so pivotal in that campaign. And since y'all are the creative guys, the graphic guys, I just want to tell you one little tiny story about that, and then we'll go into Mary's maxims. I had, because of the mayor's campaign, I was a known entity if you lived in Atlanta. Now, I wasn't trying to be a legend in my own mind, but when you have spent $500,000 on television and people don't know who you are, you really wasted your money. So people kind of got the sense of it. So coming back in under the cloak of darkness to run again, I knew it was critical that we reinforce the brand. And so I went to Brand Book and said, David, will you help me design this? So we designed the mail pieces that were unlike your typical campaign pieces. Number one, they weren't negative, which I really like, focus on the positive. Number two, we only had one photo of me, and it was the one that had been photoshopped during the mayor's campaign. Took all the wrinkles out, but looked like me. You know, sometimes they don't look like you, but this one actually people go, that's Mary. So we did that, and David had to be, I mean, he literally had to turn stuff around in a smaller amount of time than even y'all do for corporate clients, because it was a campaign, and all of a sudden at 10 o'clock at night something would happen, and then it would all blow up, and by 6 o'clock the next morning it had to get out. So it was pretty crazy, and so I'm devoted. So I am here. So what I thought I would do today that might be fun, because I'm a soundbite kind of a girl having been in radio all those years, is to give you some thoughts. And the audience participation is, y'all get to choose which ones I talk about. So somebody, if you will, and you don't have to, because I can talk for hours, and there's a lot of evidence to support that. But if somebody has one that you want me to tell you how I came by using it, or where I got it, or some anecdote, let me know. That is a typical, as all of us who grew up in the South know, that's a typical Southern expression. And it's the third one because it works with the don't fight with a pig, you both get dirty and the pig loves it. We had so many things in all of my campaigns that were people trying to do the gotcha. And if you got in the mud with them, because now everything's on YouTube, every moment there's nothing anymore that can just be a private conversation. Anything, there will be somebody with a little video cam. So we were very thoughtful about what we would not address. Because I have always found that when you do address something, then you've set up that confrontation and it gets legs and it has a life. If it's water off a duck's back and you just let it go, then it probably isn't going to be on the 6 o'clock news. So we did that a lot in the campaign, including in the 2009 campaign. There was attack mail that was sent all over the city. If you go to YouTube, you can still see my response, which wasn't the best. But all my media people said, you got to do this, you got to get out, you got to counter. And in 2009, I believed them. The opposition tried the same thing in 2013. My major media people that I wasn't paying anymore called me up and said, you got to do a press conference, got to get on the air. And I said, not going to, did that once, it didn't work so well, not doing it again. So what happened was there was no story. So they did all this hate mail, but the people who were going to vote for me knew that that was not true. And the people that weren't going to vote for me weren't going to vote for me anyway, but we didn't lose our core audience because we didn't give them legs. So that's the genesis of that. Anybody else? Yes? Double thinking, I started in the radio business because I actually was running radio stations at 27 years old, and all of the managers were 35 and older and had more experience. So I had the, chick thing and the young thing and all of that, and don't get hit on, how do you not get hit on? But that's a conversation for about half this audience later. So, but at any rate, the double thinking is you think it through, and whatever the big decision is. And then you stop and you double think. You just start all the way back to the beginning and are looking for, what did I miss? What do I need to adjust? And that's also part of being able to have the balance between your own conviction and yet assimilating and absorbing other people's concerns and ideas so that you come out with a better end result. Yes, sir.
What do you do between think one and think two? I don't think think two follows immediately on the end of think one.
Sometimes it does, but you're right. What you do in the meantime is to make sure you've touched base with the other people that need to be involved in the decision, if there are any. I mean, there are very few decisions that you don't need to run by some people, and so that double thinking incorporates your best information so that when you get out there very publicly, like I just took a very public stand on sidewalks. We won't get into that this morning, but I made that decision that the city was doing this wrong, went out there, it'll be on the news next week, and but my double thinking was talking with several of my colleagues and making sure that we had tweaked it correctly. So, you know, I had my decision, but then I double thought it and made sure, and I ended up getting enough co-sponsors that it should pass, knock on wood, if they don't bail out next week. So that's the reason. Yes?
So how do you factor that into leaders must find a balance between speed and deliberation? Because it sounds like we're talking about a speed reaction and a deliberated reaction. How do you fold in leadership there? And
I think each situation is different. There's sometimes when you've got to absolutely take a vote, make a decision, you've got the best information you've got at the moment. The deliberation part is that if you are just, and this goes to, I don't care if this is down in one of these, under empowering others, it doesn't matter whose idea it is as long as it's the best idea. So many people get so wedded to their idea done their way, and it's so hard to get to yes that way because other people want the feeling that they have their buy-in and that they've been heard. And so you have to be deliberate enough that you make sure they're with you. Because if you're leading and there's nobody following, as David said, you're going fast, but you may not be going effectively. So there's not a 2 hours, 5 hours, 2 days, 3 days, but particularly in politics where you've got to count your votes at the council meeting, I'm going up and down that dais very quietly, just making sure, checking in, and then when things get on crazy topics and take a wicked turn, I'll go back and go back through. So it's that kind of deliberation, because I always have to get 7 other votes or I can't get anything done. If I'd been mayor, I could have been empress, and that would have been better, but they didn't give me that. So, so that's that one. Anybody else on a special one?
How much you care before they care about how much you know?
That one was so true because I had been involved in the community for years, and what I found is that people will forgive you with your warts if they know your sincerity and they know you care and they know you're willing to work. They will really overlook the warts, and I'll give you a good example. I loved meeting y'all this morning, and I will see one of y'all 5 days from now, and I will have no visual recollection. Now, that is death to a candidate. That is absolutely death. You don't know who I am, and you know, so it's death. And you don't say that publicly, although this will be on YouTube and they'll all know now. But you don't say that publicly. So I really have to work hard at being able to overcome that and say, you got to tell me who you are again. You know, I just don't do this very well. And then they'll tell me, and I go, oh, and you live on such and such a street, and you've got 3 children, and you know, and I can do that. So it's not that I don't care; it's that I'm not very visually perceptive. So, and then, so that was one thing: is they'll forgive you your warts if they know you care. The second thing is you have to prove that you care. I go all over the city. I am in neighborhoods that are trashed. And when I was running for mayor, they wanted to give me a driver. The police wanted to do a police escort. I said, I'm not doing that. I said, I've been going in and out of these neighborhoods for years. If I have a police escort now, people will think that I'm either scared, which I'm not, or that I don't know where I am. So it was really important in that credibility of getting votes across the city that I'd been there. So that's that firsthand experience and in their community caring about their individual issues. Anybody else? One of the ones that I love is this, how many times you get back up that you don't stay on the ground. It is so important. The perseverance is amazingly important because most people don't have it. So if you have it, and it's a little bit like the Chinese water torture. I hope that's not politically incorrect, but you know, I have a lot of people who do that. I do that too. And people will just finally give you what you want to make sure that you don't drive them completely crazy. So the perseverance is really important. I want to do one, this one I think is important. A confused mind does nothing. I got this from a great guy when I first started my robocall business, which I ran for 17 years before we all hated it. I was back there before email in 1992 with a robocall business and changed stuff at City Hall. That's how I first got involved at City Hall. So, but at any rate, a confused mind does nothing. It is so important, and I know y'all understand this because you sell graphics and you sell images, and so you get that. But most people don't. So they'll have 17 different ways we can, not 17 different ways we can do this, but all of this stuff. And when people have all of this stuff, they just can't get it. So I go to the soundbite, reinforce the brand, and try to close the order. I want to go to the second page because I may not even take a full 30 minutes unless we have questions and answers and they go on longer. But at the top of this page, agendas with timeline. I did this with the flower show, and I've done it for everything else I've ever run. We had 20 different committee chairs, and they would each need to report out. And so I put all 20 in the order I wanted to hear from them and gave them timelines. So the meeting started at 10. The first person was up at 10:02. She talked until 10:05. The next person was up at 10:05. He talked until 10:08. It was so powerful because people saw that they were one of 20, and they stood up and they sat down. And then at the end, we had some discussion. But we got through what had typically been a 3-hour meeting at least, because it's complicated and they all had a lot to say. But this way, they had the discipline. And that's so important in a meeting, because I say if you let them go, they'll always come back. I refuse to have a meeting longer than an hour and a half. At the end of an hour and a half, I say we're all dismissed. Everything else will come in email. But that way, people know, and so even if you don't have that many different reports and you have longer discussion, people still they know the discipline is there. And they will show back up if you don't abuse their time. The other one I want to talk about is the whole perception is reality. My old radio boss, who was a vaudevillian, and boy was he nutty. So he was a legend in his own mind. It was all about Robert. But his way of expressing this was, if a man says it's so, it is to him. And I went, Robert, that's right. You know? Yes, I get that. So that has always been important to me, is to really understand that you can't change the way they think. If they absolutely have this belief, it's their belief. In politics, you get used to it because you have people that do like you and people that don't like you. If they like you, it's hard to get them not to. If they don't like you, it's really hard to get them to do it. So you reinforce the brand and go after your core audience and hope that it's enough. But it's so important as you're sharing any information on the perception. Yes?
Understanding the way others perceive the information, that controlling that, or especially in light of such a diverse population in Atlanta, did you find, how do you get at how they're going to hear you or perceive you?
Well, in the world that I was in, I knew the people, so I knew the different parts of the city, and I knew the different constituencies really pretty well before I ever ran for office. I'd been a community activist for 10 years before I ran for office, so I had that base. But the other thing, which is a little different but was really important, I had a guy who was a stealth spy. He would show up when I had a meeting in Southeast Atlanta, And he would show up if I had a meeting in Midtown, and he would show up if I had a meeting on the west side. He wanted to see if my story changed, if what I was telling one part of the city was different than what I was telling the other part of the city. And he has been one of my strongest supporters for 20 years because he said, I've watched her. I am out there. You know, she's in Browns Mill, which is down near the airport, and the big, it's right, almost walking distance to the big post office that's near the airport. And I'm on Browns Mill Road, and I'm in a little tiny basement of a little tiny house, and he shows up, and I'm going, Kelly, what are you doing here? I'm just here. And so he was checking me out. So the important thing is your message doesn't change, but you're just thoughtful about what people are, how they are hearing it. Because the reality is all of us want the same things. We want good environments, and we want to be able to raise our children if we have them, and we want, you know, the government to work for us. That's always a stretch, but we actually want that to happen from time to time. And so we all want the same things. So I always focused on the commonality of people versus and then of course you have the lunatic fringe, but y'all all know about that because y'all work with the lunatic fringe. So some people you just are, you know, some people you just have to dismiss, and that's the water off a duck's back. You go, I'm not bothering that. I'm not getting into that situation. So, but the core message, if it doesn't change, then your consistency comes across. Your sincerity and your consistency come across. Anybody else? Okay, let's see what else I wanted to do. Real quick. The controlling your emotions under pressure, and the statement on the front about getting angry, really important. We all get good and annoyed, and I get good and annoyed, but I have learned to phrase my annoyance and to say, I am choosing my words very carefully, and I am being very calm, but underneath this very calm demeanor is very unhappiness. And so I lower the tone and the tenor, but the message is really clear. Because, and particularly in political campaigns where everybody's under pressure, and it's a lot like your work, you know, something just goes absolutely wrong. I overheard a guy yesterday as I was making the copies at FedEx who was talking about some woman that he'd sent exactly those Pantene colors, and she said they're different. And I heard him talking to his cohort. He goes, she said they're different. We got to do X. And I thought, he is really annoyed. But the customer was always right. He was handling it very well. So your business is just like that. It's complicated. Yes?
So, and don't state the obvious. I've heard this sort of flipped on its head a little bit, that you know the obvious problem that you have maybe in marketing, and kind of, instead of treating it as a problem, you leverage it as a strength instead. So it's a good way to sort of know that. But you're saying, don't state the obvious. What do you think?
That one, and thank you for bringing that up because it's very different for your industry than what I was talking about. Recently, I had two city departments that were both working on the same stuff, kind of weird. And I'm in charge of those two departments. And so council members have certain responsibilities. And so they were real annoyed with each other. And my assistant, bless her heart, you always say that in the South when you're getting ready to smash somebody, you know. So my assistant, bless her heart, decided, I know there's been a lot, and I just cut her off. And so afterwards I said, Erica, we just don't say that. You know, I never state, you know, we're all real unhappy here, because then I'm just reinforcing that negative energy. So what I did was just immediately go into how I was going to divide up the responsibilities so everybody could feel good about the next step. So don't state the obvious. The other one is, and I'm breaking my rule because I said I would never talk about this, but I'm going to tell you because then you'll understand. One of the things that became really crazy in the campaign was, in the mayor's campaign, was the whole question of race. And I never talked about race because we all come, and what I said on camera was, we all come in our packages. This is the one I got. I mean, we all live inside packages. So I never, ever went into those kinds of talking about how we're different. I always talked about how we are alike and our goals and our aspirations are alike. So don't go into any of that stuff because it divides us, and when you're dividing people, you're not bringing them together in the most collaborative way. Anybody else? Yes.
Under communication, the first one, expressing ideology is one of the leader's most powerful tools. Let me just add, A, I agree. B, but there's a problem. When you get really effective, sometimes you're perceived as an ideologue. And people don't really like ideologues. What do you have to say about that?
I think that's on how the credit is given. I was saying to some of y'all earlier that elected officials have a exalted opinion of their own self-worth, and so they can get arrogant, they can get petulant, they can have this. So I think it's a humility thing, that you check that arrogance at the door, and so I've never been called an ideologue. Maybe I've never gotten that. Maybe I haven't gotten that far, or not to my knowledge. But I think it's more of what that attitude is. It's not so much your ideas, and then it's also being flexible and and always moving forward, because you'll have, and particularly in politics, where every vote you're counting to 8, and people will disappoint you. They'll just be on the other side of an issue. So you just literally can't look back 15 minutes. And so if each day you're like a goose in a new world, you wake up absolutely fresh and don't look backwards, you don't tend to get those labels attached to you. And it was really important in my election, because I had a very difficult 2 years in that campaign, and a heartbreaking loss that many people think was unfair. So going back down there, the current mayor did not want me there. It was real clear. And what happened to us in the campaign in 2013, it was real clear. So I had to go down there as an elected official and absolutely put that behind me, because we take an oath that we will never vote out of fear or favor. And you really have to do that. You really have to vote right, and you have to be an adult, and you have to not hold grudges. And if you don't, you shouldn't ask to represent people, because you're one of 15 people who vote for 400,000. So you have to be an adult. So I think that helps counter the idea that you are puffed up and arrogant. Yes?
Mary, can you expand on leadership doesn't simply happen, it's taught, learned, developed, maybe some of those instances where you've learned and it's how you've developed different skills and capabilities, and maybe who some mentors might have been?
What I did was I've read bunches of books on leadership and sales and various and sundry things, and just gotten a lot of ideas from that. And then so the point of having it be taught, learned, and developed, that's what y'all are doing today. You got me, and then you've got other people. So you got people that are probably really good in their arenas, which is fabulous. So this is what, we're all learning from each other. I mean, half of this is plagiarized. I just can't figure out where it came from, because I've had it for a while. So please don't say these are Mary's and she created them all, because I will be called into court. But it's, so it is important to go online and get information. There's a lot online. So it's, but as far as learning, the OJT, I would say the biggest OJT was in that 2009 campaign, when I took the bait and went on television and lost part of my base. Now, I'd been told by the national consultants that if I didn't do that, I would have come in third, and I wouldn't have made it to the runoff, and I believed them. But in 2013, looking back, I went, not doing that, just not going to go there. So that was a painful one, because I lost. So now, anything else? Because I'm getting ready to get off the stage, and I want to give you one final thing that I absolutely love, and this is let's see, here we go. This is a quote by Winston Churchill. Here you go, ladies. And it just it sums up what I try to do every day. You already got one? All right. Here you go. Perfect. And for the camera, I will read it out loud. The only guide to a man is his conscience. The only shield to his memory is the rectitude and sincerity of his actions. It is very imprudent to walk through life without this shield, because we are so often mocked by the failure of our hopes and the upsetting of our calculations. But with this shield, however the fates may play, we march always in the ranks of honor. So, thank you for letting me share with you.